All right, I'm Dave Ratt, and welcome to Sound Tips Episode 4. Let's talk about some pro audio sound tips and see if we have something useful for today. Sound tip number 1. You're at a show, you turn up all the mics, you get your band ready to go, and you've got a hum or a buzz showing up. And it's not just showing up on one channel, it's showing up everywhere, or at least on the channels with high gain. If it's only showing up on one channel, then go to a different channel. This won't work for that. But if it's showing up, you kind of hear it showing up across the board. Maybe there's a ground loop between the monitor system and house system. Or you just don't have time to troubleshoot whatever it is, or you don't have time to fix it. There is a last-ditch method that can help you solve and get through the show without subjecting the audience to that bumming hum and riz. And that is to polarity reverse, to use polarity reverses to cancel it out. Now, if hum is showing up on your snake, or showing up on your mic lines, or showing up in your stage, and it's showing up across the board on many inputs, that hum or riz will often be in polarity, in phase on all those inputs. And if you bring them up, it'll get louder and louder and louder. You maybe hear it a little bit on one channel, and cumulatively it's unbearable or noticeable, whatever the case may be. If you polarity reverse some of the channels, things like polarity reverse, typically it's your vocal mics that are going to do this for you because they usually have the most gain, but other ones can be used. So I'll use vocal mics as an example. I bring up all the inputs, I've got that riz, and I turn off everything except for 2 vocal mics. I set the gain to the same level, and I polarity reverse one. If the hum or riz reduces, and the faders have to be up at the same level and the gains at the same level, and you can bring it up, you should be able to find a null. You'll often find a null where it cancels out that hum. If that's the case, fairly often you can polarity reverse if you have 3 vocals across the front, leave the singer in polarity, and polarity reverse the 2 background singers, and bring those mics up, and they will actually take that induced hum out of polarity and basically do the same thing as a balanced line input and cancel it out. And that saved many a show for me. As far as the concerns about polarity reversing, I've talked about polarity before, mains versus monitors. The actual polarity of the vocal mic can be changed in many places. If you take the polarity of a vocal mic and change that polarity at the monitor position so that the singer is singing and hears the reverse polarity come out of the wedge, that will have an effect. It won't cancel out completely. It won't have a huge effect because of the time offset, but there will be some difference in tone. And typically in polarity for a monitoring situation where the speaker is located fairly close to the source, the singer, in polarity straight through with a well-designed wedge will be optimum. That said, it's not critical. I mean, you can switch it in the monitor rig, but that's not what we're talking about here. Although it could be. If you have riz in the monitor rig, you could reverse if you have a way of doing it, you could take the lead vocal mic and run it in polarity to the lead vocal wedge, and take the background vocal mics, which have the same riz on it, and reverse polarity of those into the lead vocal wedge so that the lead vocalist hears the background vocals. Doesn't matter if they're in or out of polarity because there's only one reference point, and the rizzes cancel out. So going back to front of house, if you're reversing the background vocals in the main PA, they're already monitoring in polarity to themselves, so that's not a problem. And whether they're out or in the main PA is of minor consequence, not major consequence. So you make a determination. Is the impact on the musician worse or better than the riz? And typically getting rid of the hum is going to be your primary goal there. All right. Try it. Let me know how it works. Give me comments. Ask me questions. If it sounds like poo, Find some actual poo, mic it, reverse polarity, dial it into the mix, and it'll cancel out that undesirable sound. I wouldn't actually recommend that, but if you do get a little piece of plastic poo and a spare mic and set it up, maybe it'll get a smile or two. If great engineer skills were needed to get sound gigs, there'd be no bad sounding shows. And clearly there aren't all shows sounding perfect. This is to point out people skills, positive attitude, and persistence is what gets you the gig. Knowing how to mix hopefully keeps the gig for you. Next one, number 5, processing. It used to be we would struggle to make bad sounding systems sound good. And EQ, process, do whatever we could to... Old systems sounded really bad. Big horn-loaded crap with small amps and bad limiters, if there was any. Now the struggle is to make good sounding systems not sound bad. Most of the systems now, these top level rigs, if you're on the upper scales, if you're dealing with DMB, L Acoustics, and Meyer or EAW, nice big rigs, these things sound great. So try not to mess them up. This one is a little off the beaten path here. This came out of mixing Soundgarden with Matt Cameron singing, the drummer singing. And what I was doing is he had a fairly soft voice. He would swing a mic in, he'd sing for a while, and then he'd swing it out. And if any of you have ever mixed a band with a drummer that sings, getting the cymbals and snare drum out of that drum vocal is quite the challenge indeed. Getting the cymbals out, you can dull the drum vocal down, get rid of some of that splash up there. It's pointed away from the cymbals, you can deal with that, but the snare drum tends to be quite unwieldy. One really cool trick for that is to get a distressor and set it very, very fast attack time, and set the threshold such that when the drummer is singing, it doesn't hit the threshold at all. They're just under it, or if they really shout, it starts to compress a little bit. But the snare drum, which tends to be louder than the drum vocal, will hit that thing hard. It'll light up the gain reduction knobs. It'll send it all the way to the bottom, and those distressors are so quick, or any very, very quick attack and release compressor, you can actually compress out the snare drum, and the vocal will dip with it, but you won't notice it. So you actually have a way to pretty much delete the blasting snare drum out of the drum vocal without affecting the drum vocal sound at all. Extremely effective. Let's see. And I think that's it for today. I'll do one more. Okay. Mixing without subs on an aux send, all mics can get to the subs. Do you really, really want hi-hat and lead vocal to get to the subs? And high-pass filters reduce the volume of low frequencies. So you can high-pass a hi-hat on a full-range system without subs on an aux. And you can high-pass all the channels you don't want to go to subs. But it doesn't stop that channel from getting the subs. It just turns down that channel's low-frequency content such that it's reduced in the sub. But all those mics on stage are still getting to the subs at some level. With subs on an aux send, you have a crossover. A crossover is unlike a high pass. A high pass kind of just rolls off. A crossover cuts at a much more rapid rate. It's almost, and some of these crossovers can be extremely steep. With subs on an aux, the hi-hat can't get there from here. There's no way. It doesn't matter how much it's rolled off. It cannot get to the subs because it's not sent there. The subs only have, if you only send bass and kick and maybe floor tom and a little bit of upper tom or whatever, keyboard, to the subwoofers, those are the only signals that have access to the subwoofers. All the rest of them just can't get there from here. And though it's subtle, it can be subtle or it can be significant. Having 32 mics of rumble just kind of bouncing around, jiggling your subs, causing a blur and a lack of clarity versus only putting the ones you want in there at the levels you wish. And that'll clean up your mix quite a bit, especially if you have a quality or substantial subarray. All right, that's it for today, and I'll be back with more soon.